Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship moved quietly through space on what should have been a simple survey mission. They were checking old mining sites in the outer territories where few people lived and even fewer ships traveled. Morrison had done this kind of work for 12 years, and it was usually boring. Today felt different, though he could not say why. The Defiant was not a big ship. It carried 37 people and was built for exploration, not fighting. Most of the crew had never seen real combat. They were scientists and engineers who wanted to map new worlds and study strange phenomena in deep space. Morrison liked it that way. He had seen enough fighting in his younger days. "Captain, we are getting something on the emergency channels," said Amy Brooks from her station. She was young and had joined the crew only 6 months ago, but she was good at her job. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make sense of the signals coming through space. "What kind of something?" Morrison asked, walking over to her station. The bridge was small enough that he could reach any crew member in just a few steps. "Distress calls, sir. Multiple frequencies. They are coming from the mining colony on Kepler." 442B, Amy said. Her face was pale as she listened through her headset. "Captain, these signals are bad, really bad." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Mining colonies were tough places full of tough people. It took a lot to make them call for help. "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with static and broken voices. Through the noise, Morrison could hear screaming and what sounded like machinery breaking apart. One voice came through clearly for a moment. "They are draining us. God help us, they are draining the life right out of us." Then silence. Morrison looked at his crew. Chief Engineer Lisa Park had stopped working on her diagnostics. Security Officer Ryan Cross had turned from his console with a worried expression. First Officer Kate Sullivan was already pulling up star charts. "How far are we from Kepler 442b?" Morrison asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, sir," Kate replied. "But, Captain, that colony has 12,000 people. If something happened to them..." Morrison did not want to think about what could happen to 12,000 people. The outer territories were supposed to be safe. Pirates sometimes caused trouble, but nothing that would make an entire colony scream for help like that. "Set course. For Kepler 442b, Morrison ordered. "Maximum speed." The Defiant turned toward the mining colony, and its engines pushed it faster through the darkness of space. For 6 hours, the crew worked in tense silence. Amy kept trying to raise the colony on communications, but got no response. Lisa made sure the engines ran at peak efficiency. Ryan checked their weapons, even though the Defiant only had basic defensive systems. When they finally reached Kepler 442b, Morrison wished they had stayed away. The mining colony was still there, but it was wrong. The building stood in perfect order, but no lights showed in any windows. No ships moved between the orbital platforms. No radio signals came from anywhere in the system. It was like looking at a picture of a place where people used to live. Life signs. Morrison asked, though. He already knew the answer from Ryan's expression. "None, sir. Not one living person on the entire planet," Ryan said quietly. Morrison ordered a shuttle team to investigate. He led the team himself along with Lisa and Ryan. Amy stayed on the ship to monitor communications. The shuttle landed in the main colony, square where thousands of people should have been working and living. Instead, they found statues. At first, Morrison thought they were sculptures or monuments. Then he realized they were people. Men, women, and children all turned to crystal. They stood exactly where they had been when whatever happened to them occurred. A woman reaching for her child. A man running toward a building. a group of workers, looking up at the sky with expressions of terror frozen on their crystal faces. "What could do this?" Lisa whispered. She was a practical woman who had seen strange things in space, but nothing like this. Ryan was scanning the area with his instruments. "Captain, I am reading energy traces. Something was here that drained biological matter and converted it to crystalline structures. The patterns suggest it was not natural." Morrison knelt beside one of the crystallized figures. It had been a young man, maybe 20 years old. His face showed fear, but also something else. Recognition. He had seen what was coming, for him. They found the colony records in the main administrative building. The computers were undamaged and still working. Amy guided them through the files from the ship. What they found made Morrison's blood run cold. The attack had lasted only 2 hours. Ships had appeared in the system without warning. The colony, defense grid had tried to respond, but their weapons had no effect on the attackers. The colonists had tried to evacuate, but there was nowhere to run. Then something had swept through the colony, turning every living thing to crystal. The last log entry was from the colony administrator. "They call themselves the Kethmoran Empire. They have done this to worlds across the galaxy for 300 years. They drained the life force of entire populations to power their war machines, and now they are moving toward human space." Morrison read the file 3 times before the full meaning hit him. These Kethmoran had been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries. They had destroyed countless civilizations and were now turning their attention to humanity. According to the intelligence data, the colonists had gathered the aliens' next target was New Vermont. New Vermont was home to 8 million people. It was humanity's primary agricultural world where most of their food was grown. If the Kethmoran reached New Vermont and did to it what they had done here, the loss would be devastating. Morrison checked the star charts. The nearest human fleet was 3 weeks away from New Vermont. The Kethmoran fleet, according to the colony records, would reach New Vermont in 5 days. The math was simple and terrible. There was no way to warn the fleet and get them to New Vermont in time. The USS Defiant was the only human ship in position to do anything. But what could one small exploration vessel do against an empire that had conquered the galaxy for 3 centuries? Morrison gathered his crew back on the bridge and told them what they had found. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of impossible choices. They could run back to human space and warn the authorities. By the time help arrived, New Vermont would be a planet of crystal statues. Or they could try to stop the Kethmoran themselves. "Captain," Amy said finally, "what are we going to do?" Morrison looked at each of his crew members. These were good people who had signed up to explore the stars, not fight a war against galactic conquerors. He had no right to ask them to sacrifice their lives. But 8 million people on New Vermont had no idea what was coming for them. "We are going to intercept the Kethmoran fleet," Morrison said. "We are going to buy time for New Vermont to evacuate." The crew stared at him. Lisa was the first to speak. "Captain, that is suicide. Our weapons cannot even scratch their ships." "Maybe," Morrison replied. "But we are the only ones who can try." Outside the viewing screen, the crystal remains of Kepler 442b turned slowly in space. 12,000 people who had been alive yesterday were now monuments to the terror that was coming for humanity. Morrison would not let that happen to 8 million more. The USS Defiant turned away from the dead world and set course to intercept the most feared predators in the galaxy. The news of humanity's victories spread across the galaxy faster than their warships could travel. On 100 different worlds, alien species watched broadcasts showing the impossible. The mighty Vorthak Empire was being systematically destroyed by a species no one had ever heard of before. Admiral Lisa Brooks stood in the command center of the battleship Vengeance, studying tactical displays that showed Vorthak fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Each red dot represented ships that were committing genocide against helpless populations. Each dot would be eliminated. Intelligence reports confirm 17 separate Vorthak battle groups, she said to her staff. They're spread across 43 systems, each group operating independently. Total enemy strength estimated at 487 ships. Captain Mike Rodriguez, her tactical officer, looked at the numbers with concern. Admiral, even with our technological advantages, those are heavy odds. We have 47 ships against nearly 500. Brooks smiled coldly. Captain, you're thinking like them. They see warfare as a numbers game where the largest fleet wins. We're going to show them why they're wrong. She activated the fleet communication system and addressed every ship captain simultaneously. Gentlemen and ladies, we're implementing Operation Retribution. Each ship will operate independently, hunting Vorthak fleets across the galaxy. Your orders are simple. Find them, kill them, leave no survivors. The human fleet scattered in different directions, each ship heading toward different systems where Vorthak forces were operating. Unlike galactic military doctrine that kept fleets together for mutual support, humans understood that small, fast ships could accomplish more than massive formations. Captain Melissa Turner commanded the heavy cruiser Warhammer as it approached. The Grimhold system, where intelligence indicated a major Vorthak fortress world. The planet was considered impregnable, with orbital defense platforms and underground military complexes that had never been successfully attacked. Long-range sensors confirm enemy positions, reported Lieutenant Dave Kim, her tactical officer. The planet has 47 defensive platforms and a fleet of 12 ships in close orbit. Intelligence was right about this being a tough target. Turner studied the tactical display and smiled. The Vorthak had built their defenses according to standard galactic thinking. Massive fixed positions that could absorb enormous amounts of punishment. They had never faced an enemy that didn't fight fair. Navigation, take us to the edge of the system, she ordered. Communications, start broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Her plan was simple but devastating. Instead of attacking the fortress directly, she would use psychological warfare and economic blockade tactics that no galactic power had ever employed. The Vorthak expected a frontal assault. They would get something much worse. The Warhammer positioned itself at the system's main hyperspace exit point and began intercepting every ship that tried to enter or leave. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, military couriers, all were stopped and searched. Any ship carrying supplies for the Vorthak military was destroyed without warning. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Fortress Commander, Kim reported. General Thaxamore is demanding that we identify ourselves and state our intentions. Put him through, Turner said. The main screen showed a Vorthak general in a full military uniform, his scaled face twisted with anger. Behind him, the bridge of his command ship looked like something from a medieval castle rather than a modern warship. Unknown vessel. You will cease your attacks on civilian shipping. Immediately, General Thaxamore demanded. The planet Grimhold is under the protection of the Vorthak Empire. You are committing acts of piracy. Turner stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. General Thaxamore, I'm Captain Melissa Turner of the Terran Defense Force. This system is now under military blockade. No ships will be allowed to enter or leave until you surrender unconditionally. Thaxmore's eyes widened with surprise and then anger. Terran, I have never heard of your pathetic species. You have one small ship against an entire fortress world. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. General, I have a better offer, Turner replied calmly. Surrender now, and your troops will be treated according to galactic conventions on prisoner rights. Continue to resist and you'll face the consequences. The Vorthak general laughed harshly. You think one ship can threaten Grimhold? We have enough supplies to last for years. Our defenses can destroy 1,000 ships your size. Turner's expression hardened. General, you have 24 hours to consider my offer. After that, things get unpleasant. The transmission ended, and Turner turned to her crew. Begin Phase 2, full electronic warfare deployment. The Warhammer launched dozens of small drones that spread throughout the system and began jamming every communication frequency the Vorthak used. Within hours, the fortress world was cut off from the outside galaxy. They could neither send messages nor receive them. Meanwhile, Captain Paul Scott led a special operations mission aboard the stealth ship Shadow. His target was a Vorthak supply convoy heading toward Coalition space with weapons intended for use against civilian populations. Convoy spotted, reported Sergeant Kelly Price, his intelligence officer. 12 cargo ships escorted by 4 warships. They're carrying enough firepower to level a dozen cities. Scott studied the tactical display and planned his attack. The convoy was traveling through an asteroid field, which would provide perfect cover for his approach. More importantly, it would allow him to use the environment as a weapon. Helm, take us into the asteroid field, he ordered. Weapons, prepare kinetic mines. We're going to turn those rocks into bullets. The Shadow moved silently through the asteroids, while its crew prepared for battle. Human military doctrine emphasized using every advantage possible, including the environment itself. What looked like empty space to the Vorthak was actually a massive weapons system waiting to be activated. The attack began when the convoy entered the densest part of the asteroid field. Scott's crew had placed kinetic charges on dozens of asteroids, turning them into guided missiles that struck the Vorthak ships with devastating force. The escort warships tried to return fire, but they couldn't target what they couldn't see. One by one, they were destroyed by asteroids that seemed to move with impossible precision. The cargo ships, loaded with weapons and supplies, exploded in spectacular displays that lit up the entire asteroid field. Mission accomplished, Scott reported to Fleet Command. Convoy destroyed, no survivors. Back at Grimhold, General Thaxmore was beginning to understand the scope of his problem. The human blockade had cut off all supplies to his fortress world. Worse, his sensors were detecting strange energy signatures throughout the system that he couldn't identify. General, our food production facilities are reporting sabotage, his aide reported nervously. Someone has contaminated our water recycling systems and destroyed 3 hydroponics bays. Thaxmore stared at the report in disbelief. How is this possible? Our security is absolute. No enemy forces have landed on the planet. What the Vorthak general didn't know was that human special forces had been infiltrating his world for days. Small teams of soldiers had used stealth technology to bypass all planetary defenses and were now sabotaging critical infrastructure from within. Lieutenant Amy Foster led one such team through the underground maintenance tunnels beneath the main military complex. Her mission was to plant explosive charges on the fortress's main power generators. Charges placed and armed, she reported over her encrypted radio. Detonation in 60 seconds. The explosions that followed plunged half the fortress into darkness. Emergency lighting came on, but the Vorthak defenders were now operating with reduced power and failing life support systems. Throughout the galaxy, similar operations were taking place as human forces demonstrated warfare techniques that no alien species had ever imagined. They didn't just fight armies, they destroyed entire military infrastructures with surgical precision. On the planet Veltara Prime, Emperor Thexmor himself received reports of the disasters befalling his empire. The supreme leader of the Vorthak was a massive being who had ruled through fear and intimidation for over 50 years. Now, for the first time in his life, he was afraid. "How many fleets have we lost?" he demanded from his throne room deep beneath the planetary surface. 12 battle groups have been completely destroyed, his military advisor reported. 3 more are trapped in blockades and running out of supplies. Our remaining forces are requesting permission to withdraw to defensive positions. Thexmor's rage was terrible to behold. The Vorthak Empire does not retreat. We are the strongest military power in the galaxy. My lord, his advisor said carefully, these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use tactics that seem to violate the laws of warfare. They attack civilians, they sabotage infrastructure, they show no honor in battle. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Then we will show them what happens when they anger the Vorthak Empire. Activate the planetary bombardment protocols. If they want to protect Coalition civilians, let them watch as we execute every prisoner we have taken. The order went out across the Empire. All Coalition prisoners were to be. General Patrick Kane stood on the bridge of the battleship Vengeance as the Terran fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Coalition space. Around him, 47 warships appeared in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light as their stealth systems powered up. Each ship was smaller than the massive vessels favored by galactic powers, but they carried technology and firepower that made them deadly beyond measure. Admiral Brooks, deploy the fleet in standard combat formation, Kane ordered. Colonel Murphy, prepare your Marines for immediate deployment. We're going to hit them fast and hard. Admiral Lisa Brooks stood at the tactical station, her hands moving across holographic displays that showed the positions of every ship in both fleets. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, studying alien warfare and designing strategies to counter their primitive tactics. Vorthak fleet detected at bearing 27 Mark IV, she reported. 38 ships remaining after Captain Harrison's engagement. They're moving to intercept us. Kane nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice reached every human soldier in the fleet, men and women who had trained their entire lives for war against alien enemies. "This is General Kane," he said. "You all know why we're here. The Vorthak Empire has committed genocide against peaceful species. They have murdered billions of innocent beings. Today, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone commits war crimes and humanity finds out about it." Throughout the fleet, soldiers checked their weapons and prepared for battle. These were not ordinary troops. They were Earth's finest warriors, selected for their skill, courage, and absolute dedication to victory. They had studied every form of combat known to humanity and improved upon them all. Colonel Ryan Murphy stood in the launch bay of the assault ship Thunder, surrounded by his Marines. Each one wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any known alien species. Their weapons were designed to kill efficiently in any environment, from the vacuum of space to dense urban areas. "Listen up," Murphy said to his troops. "Intelligence reports show the Vorthak have been running concentration camps on Nexara, Millions of coalition civilians are being held there for execution. Our job is to get them out and make sure the beings responsible never hurt anyone again. Sergeant Danny White, leader of First Squad, raised his hand. Rules of engagement, sir? Murphy's expression was grim. Anyone wearing a Vorthak uniform is a legitimate target. Anyone running a concentration camp dies on sight. Anyone surrendering will be taken prisoner for war crimes trials. Clear? Clear, sir, the Marines replied in unison. The Vorthak fleet approached in the traditional galactic battle formation, a massive wall of ships that relied on overwhelming firepower to crush their enemies. Lord Admiral Vexoth, who had taken command after General Krexith's death, studied the human fleet with growing confusion. These ships are tiny, he said to his tactical officer. How many beings could possibly be aboard vessels that small? Unknown, Lord Admiral, came the reply. But our intelligence suggests these are the same beings who destroyed our forces at Keth Prime. We should be cautious. Vexoth sneered. Cautious. We have 38 ships against their 47. Our vessels are 3 times larger than theirs. We will crush these insects and show the galaxy that the Vorthak Empire cannot be defeated. The first exchange of fire began as the fleets closed to weapons range. The Vorthak opened with massive energy beams designed to overwhelm enemy shields and armor. The weapons were devastating and had destroyed countless alien fleets in the past. The human ships didn't even try to absorb the attacks. Instead, they moved with impossible speed and precision, dodging between energy beams while their own weapons struck back. Where Vorthak weapons were designed for raw power, human weapons were designed for accuracy and efficiency. Admiral Brooks watched the battle develop on her tactical display and smiled coldly. The Vorthak were fighting exactly as their intelligence reports had predicted. They stood still and traded shots like ancient sailing ships, relying on their heavy armor to protect them. All ships, implement Pattern Delta, she ordered. Show them how real space combat works. The human fleet suddenly scattered into smaller groups that moved independently while maintaining perfect coordination. Each group attacked from a different angle, forcing the Vorthak to split their fire and weakening their defensive formation. The battleship destroyer, commanded by Captain Alex Turner, led the main assault against the Vorthak flagship. Turner had studied naval warfare throughout human history and understood that the key to victory was destroying enemy command and control. Target their bridge and communication arrays, Turner ordered. I want that flagship blind and leaderless. The destroyer's main guns fired in sequence, each shot precisely calculated to cause maximum damage. Kinetic penetrators struck the Vorthak flagship's command sections, while electronic warfare systems jammed their communications. Within minutes, Lord Admiral Vexoth found himself cut off from his fleet and unable to coordinate their defense. On the planet Nexara, the Vorthak garrison had received reports of the space battle and were preparing their defenses. General Mordak commanded 50,000 troops and believed his position was unassailable. The planet had orbital defense platforms and underground bunker complexes that could withstand any assault. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Colonel Murphy's assault force approached Nexara in stealth transports that were invisible to the planet's sensors. Instead of the massive landing ships used in galactic warfare, humans used small, fast vessels that could deploy troops directly where they were needed most. Intelligence shows the main concentration camp is located here, Murphy said, pointing to a tactical display. 15 miles northeast of the capital city. We're going to hit it first and get those civilians out. Major Sam Carter, leader of the 5th Marine Battalion, studied the target area. Sir, The camp is surrounded by defensive positions and has over 5,000 guards. Recommend we call for orbital bombardment first." Murphy shook his head. "Negative, Major. Those are civilians down there. We go in fast and precise. No collateral damage." The assault began at dawn with simultaneous attacks across the planet. Human Marines dropped from orbit in individual pods that landed with pinpoint accuracy. Unlike galactic military doctrine that relied on massive frontal assaults, humans used infiltration, flanking maneuvers, and coordinated small unit tactics. The Vorthak defenders had never faced anything like it. They were used to enemies, who announced their attacks and followed predictable patterns. These humans appeared everywhere at once, striking from unexpected directions and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Sergeant White's squad landed directly inside the concentration camp and immediately engaged the guards. The Vorthak. Soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but they moved slowly and relied on intimidation rather than skill. Against trained human Marines, they didn't stand a chance. "Perimeter secure," White reported over his radio. "Beginning civilian evacuation." The concentration camp was worse than anything in the intelligence reports. Thousands of coalition civilians were packed into filthy barracks with barely enough food or water to survive. Many were sick or injured from beatings by their guards. Children cried in their parents' arms while elderly beings lay dying on the ground. "Medical teams to the camp immediately," White ordered. "And get me a direct line to Colonel Murphy. He needs to see this." Throughout the planet, similar scenes were playing out as human forces liberated camp after camp. The Vorthak had been systematically starving, torturing, and executing prisoners on an industrial scale. Every discovery made the human soldiers angrier and more determined to make their enemies pay. Major Carter led the assault on the capital city where General Mordak had his headquarters. The Vorthak general had positioned his best troops in defensive positions throughout the city and was confident he could hold out until reinforcements arrived. He watched from his command bunker as strange reports came in from across the planet. His forces were being defeated everywhere, but the enemy tactics made no sense. Instead of massive armies, small groups of humans were appearing behind his lines and destroying key targets with surgical precision. "How many enemy troops have landed?" he demanded. "Unknown, General," his aide replied nervously. "Our estimates range from 10,000 to over 100,000. They're using some kind of stealth technology we can't detect." The truth was that Murphy had deployed only 5,000 Marines to conquer an entire planet, but they fought with a coordination and effectiveness that made them seem like a much larger force. Every squad knew exactly where to go and what to do. Every attack was perfectly timed to support the others. Captain Lisa Stone led a special operations team to capture General Mordak alive. Their intelligence indicated he was personally responsible for ordering the execution of over 2 million civilians. Under Earth's military justice code, that made him a war criminal who needed to face trial. Stone's team infiltrated the command bunker through maintenance tunnels that the Vorthak didn't even know existed. Human intelligence gathering was far superior to anything the galaxy had seen before. They knew every detail of enemy positions and defenses. The Nightfall dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keth Prime system and immediately activated its stealth systems. Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge looking at the tactical display and felt his jaw tighten. Yasu system was a war zone. Burning ships drifted through space while massive Vorthak dreadnoughts continued their bombardment of the planet below. "Jesus Christ," whispered Sergeant Tony Blake, Harrison's weapons officer. "Look at the size of those things. The Vorthak ships were enormous, each one the size of a small city. Their dark hulls were covered in weapon emplacements that fired constantly at anything that moved. Between them, smaller coalition ships tried desperately to evacuate civilians from the dying planet. Most never made it. Harrison watched as a coalition transport loaded with refugees was hit by a Vorthak energy beam and simply vanished in a flash of light. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from a coalition ship," said Lieutenant Ben Carter, the communications officer. "Admiral Yeltara is trying to reach us." Harrison nodded. "Put her through." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a coalition warship. The alien admiral was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Her ship shook constantly from enemy fire, and sparks flew from damaged control panels around her. She looked exhausted and desperate. "Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Yeltara of the Coalition Defense Force," she said in accented but clear English. "You must leave this system immediately. The Vorthak fleet will destroy you. We appreciate your courage in coming here, but your small ship cannot help us." Harrison stepped forward so she could see him clearly. "Admiral, I'm Captain Jake Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. We're here to help." Yeltara's eyes widened with surprise and then sadness. "Terran? I have never heard of your species, Captain. But please, you must understand. The Vorthak have 30 capital ships in this system. Each one has firepower that can destroy planets. Your vessel appears to be a scout ship. There is nothing you can do here except die with us. Admiral, I need you to move your ships to a safe distance," Harrison said calmly. "We're going to engage the enemy." "Captain Harrison, that would be suicide," Yeltara protested. "The Vorthak dreadnought Bonecrusher alone has more weapons than your entire ship. Please, save yourselves. Do not throw your lives away for us." Harrison turned to his crew. They were all watching him with calm, professional expressions. These were Earth's best soldiers, men and women who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They showed no fear, only focus. "Blake, target the nearest Vorthak cruiser," Harrison ordered. "Load kinetic penetrators. Carter, prepare. The electronic warfare suite." "Davis, take us in silent running." Lieutenant Amy Davis was their pilot, a woman who could fly anything and had nerves of steel. Her hands moved across the controls, and the Nightfall began moving toward the enemy, fleet like a ghost. The ship's stealth systems made it invisible to Vorthak sensors, while its advanced engines produced no detectable energy signature. On the Coalition ship, Admiral Yeltara watched in horror as the small human vessel headed directly toward the massive Vorthak fleet. She had seen many brave beings die in this war, but this seemed like pointless suicide. The human ship was tiny compared to the enemy dreadnoughts. The Vorthak fleet commander, Lord General Krexith, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the bombardment with satisfaction. His species had conquered 47 other species, using the same tactics: overwhelming firepower, brutal intimidation, and complete destruction of enemy resistance. Soon this system would be cleansed and ready for Vorthak colonization. "General, our sensors are detecting some kind of anomaly," reported his tactical officer. "There appears to be a small vessel moving through the outer system." Krexith barely glanced at the display. "Probably debris from one of their destroyed ships. Continue the bombardment." The Nightfall closed to within weapons range of the Vorthak cruiser Void Render. The enemy ship was over 2 miles long and bristled with energy weapons. Its shields could absorb the firepower of entire fleets. At least that was what galactic military doctrine said. "Target acquired," Blake reported. Kinetic penetrators loaded and ready. Fire, Harrison said quietly. The Nightfall's main weapon was unlike anything in galactic warfare. Instead of energy beams that could be absorbed by shields, it fired solid projectiles at incredible speed. The tungsten rods were accelerated to nearly the speed of light by magnetic fields and struck with the force of nuclear weapons. The first penetrator hit the Void Render's shield generator and passed right through it as if it wasn't there. The second and third rods punched through the ship's armor and detonated inside its reactor core. The massive cruiser broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up space like a new star. On his flagship, General Krexith stared at the tactical display in disbelief. One of his cruisers had just been destroyed by something his sensors couldn't even detect properly. The explosion was unlike anything he had seen before. There were no energy signatures, no plasma discharge, just pure kinetic destruction. What happened to the Void Render? He demanded. Unknown, General, his tactical officer replied, fear clear in his voice. The ship simply exploded. Our sensors detected some kind of high-velocity impact just before the detonation. The Nightfall had already moved to a new position and was targeting another Vorthak ship. This time, Harrison ordered a different approach. Instead of destroying the enemy vessel, they would disable it and let it drift helplessly in space. Blake, target their engine systems only, Harrison said. I want that ship alive but helpless. The kinetic penetrators struck the cruiser black. Death's engine compartments with surgical precision. The massive ship suddenly stopped moving and began spinning slowly as its damaged systems failed. Emergency lights flashed along its hull as the crew tried desperately to restore power. Now hit their communication array, Harrison ordered. Another penetrator destroyed the ship's ability to call for help or coordinate with the rest of the fleet. The Black Death was now a floating tomb, alive but completely helpless. General Krexith watched two more of his ships suffer the same fate. They were being attacked by something he couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't fight. His weapons were useless against an enemy that struck from stealth and disappeared before he could respond. All ships, defensive formation, he ordered. Begin active sensor sweeps of the entire system. The Vorthak fleet pulled together and started searching for their invisible attacker. Their sensors swept space with every type of energy they had, but the Nightfall's stealth systems were far beyond anything they understood. The human ship remained completely undetectable while it continued its attack. Admiral Yeltara watched from her command ship as the impossible happened before her eyes. The mighty Vorthak fleet, which had terrorized the galaxy for decades, was being systematically destroyed by a single small vessel. She had never seen anything like it. The human ship fought with a precision and ruthlessness that shocked her. How are they doing this? Asked her tactical officer. I don't know, Yeltara replied quietly. But I'm beginning to understand why they weren't afraid. The Nightfall's next target was the dreadnought Bone Crusher, the same ship Admiral Yeltara had warned them about. It was the largest vessel in the Vorthak fleet, with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Harrison studied the massive ship on his tactical display and smiled grimly. Blake, I want you to target their weapon systems one by one, he said. Let's show them what helpless really means. The attack began with surgical strikes against the dreadnought's main guns. Each kinetic penetrator destroyed a weapon emplacement with devastating accuracy. The Bone Crusher's crew tried to return fire, but they couldn't target something they couldn't see. Their energy beams swept empty space while the invisible attacker continued its methodical destruction of their weapons. Lieutenant Amy Foster, who served as the ship's intelligence officer, was recording everything for Earth's military analysts. This was humanity's first real combat against galactic technology, and every detail would be studied for future operations. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the flagship," she reported. "They're preparing to fire some kind of planet-killer weapon." Harrison's expression hardened. The Vorthak were going to destroy Keth Prime completely rather than lose face to an unknown enemy. Billions of civilians were still on that planet, beings who had done nothing wrong except exist in the path of Vorthak expansion. "Davis, emergency. Speed to the flagship," Harrison ordered. "Blake, prepare maximum yield penetrators." The Nightfall raced through space toward General Krexith's command ship. The Vorthak flagship was charging its most powerful weapon, a beam that could crack a planet's crust and kill everything on the surface. Harrison watched the energy readings climb and knew he had only seconds to act. "Fire everything," he said. 6. Kinetic penetrators struck the flagship's main weapon at the moment of firing. The planet-killer beam exploded inside its own barrel, sending massive explosions throughout the ship's forward sections. General Krexith's bridge disappeared in a ball of fire as his own weapon destroyed him. The communication tower on Keth Prime shook as another blast wave hit the planet's surface. Commander Zethan pressed his three-fingered hand against the wall to steady himself, while his other hand worked frantically at the control panel. The tower was the last working transmitter on the planet, and he knew the Vorthak fleet would find it soon. Every second counted now. Around him, his communication team worked in desperate silence. The air tasted of smoke and burning metal from the cities that had been destroyed just hours before. Through the cracked windows, Zethan could see the dark shapes of Vorthak ships hanging in the red sky like death itself. Their weapons fired continuously, turning everything below into ash and ruin. "Signal is ready, Commander," said his assistant, her voice shaking with fear and exhaustion. Like all of their species, she had never seen war before the Vorthak came. None of them had. The Kethvar coalition had been peaceful for over 1,000 years. Zethan looked at the message one more time. It was simple and direct, translated into every known galactic language. The words seemed too small for what they were asking, but they were all he had left. His people were dying. The Nexari and the Veltari, their allies in the coalition, were also being slaughtered. Someone had to hear them. Someone had to care. "Send it to every system in the galaxy," he ordered. "Every single one." The transmission began, sending their plea across space, faster than light itself. The message was desperate but clear. The Kethvar coalition needed military help. They needed it now. The Vorthak Empire was killing everyone, destroying everything, and they could not stop it alone. The signal went out. Zethan thought about his family. His mate and children had been in the capital city when the first attack came. He had not heard from them since. Like millions of others, they were probably dead now. The Vorthak did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They only destroyed. Light. Years away from the dying planet, the message reached Earth's deep space monitoring station hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. The station looked like just another piece of space rock, but inside it was filled with the most advanced technology humanity had ever built. For 50 years, Earth had been watching the galaxy in secret, learning about alien species and their wars. Lieutenant Katie Walsh was on duty when the coalition message arrived. She had been monitoring galactic communications for 3 years and had seen many distress calls before. Most were about trade disputes or territorial arguments. This one was different. As she read the translation, her face went pale. The message described cities being burned from orbit. It talked about entire planets being cracked open by massive weapons. It mentioned concentration camps where alien families were being killed just for existing. The numbers were horrifying. Billions were already dead, and billions more would die soon. Katie immediately sent the message up the chain of command. Within an hour, it had reached the highest levels of Earth's government and military. General Patrick Kane, the head of Terran, Defense Command, read it in his underground office deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Kane was a tall man with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for the day when Earth would need to fight in space. While other planets had focused on trade and diplomacy, humans had focused on war. They had studied every conflict in galactic history and learned from them all. They had built weapons and ships that no alien species knew about. They had trained soldiers who could fight in any environment against any enemy. "Get me Admiral Brooks and Colonel Murphy," Kane said to his aide. Priority 1. Admiral Lisa Brooks arrived first. She commanded Earth's space fleet, ships that were hidden throughout the solar system, waiting for orders. She was known for her tactical brilliance and her complete lack of fear in combat. Colonel Ryan Murphy came next. He led Earth's special forces, soldiers who could kill in 100 different ways and disappear without a trace. They sat around a metal table in Kane's office and read the coalition message together. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of air recyclers. On the wall, a display showed the current positions of Earth's hidden fleet. 47 ships, each one designed for war, each one crewed by humans who had trained their whole lives for this moment. "How long to reach coalition space?" Kane asked. 18 days with our fastest ships, Brooks answered. "But General, we don't know anything about Vorthak military capabilities. This could be a trap." Murphy leaned forward. "My teams have been studying alien warfare tactics for decades. The Vorthak use standard galactic military doctrine, massive ships, energy weapons, frontal assaults. They rely on intimidation and overwhelming force." Kane nodded slowly. He had read the reports. Galactic warfare was primitive compared to human standards. Alien species fought like humans had fought thousands of years ago, standing in lines and shooting at each other until one side gave up. They had rules about what weapons could be used and how battles should be fought. They thought war was a game with points and scores. Humans knew better. War was about winning, nothing else. It was about making the enemy stop fighting by any means necessary. It was about being so terrible in battle that your enemies would rather die than face you. Again, "The Vorthak are committing genocide," Kane said quietly. "The coalition message shows clear evidence of war crimes on a massive scale. Earth's position has always been clear on genocide." Brooks and Murphy both nodded. Everyone in Earth's military knew the policy. Genocide was unforgivable. Any species that tried to wipe out another species would face Earth's full military response. No negotiations, no mercy, complete destruction. "I want Captain Harrison's reconnaissance team deployed immediately," Kane ordered. "They'll take the Nightfall and reach coalition space ahead of the main fleet. Their job is to assess the situation and prepare for our arrival." "What about the diplomatic corps?" Brooks asked. "They're going to want to try negotiations first." Kane's expression hardened. "This isn't a diplomatic situation, Admiral. This is genocide. We don't negotiate with genocidal empires. We destroy them." Murphy smiled grimly. "My teams have been ready for this their whole careers, General. When do we deploy?" "Operation Hellstorm begins now," Kane said. "I want every ship ready for combat deployment within 48 hours. Full weapons load, full battle supplies. We're going to war. As his officers left to prepare their forces, Kane sat alone and read the coalition message again. The aliens were asking for help, begging for someone to save them from extinction. They probably expected diplomats or peacekeepers or maybe some trade agreements. They had no idea what was coming. Earth was sending its most merciless warriors. Soldiers who had spent generations perfecting the art of killing. Men and women who fought without fear and showed no mercy to war criminals. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of. In the depths of space, Captain Jake Harrison received his orders aboard the stealth ship Nightfall. His crew of 12 was hand-picked from Earth's best soldiers. They had trained together for years, waiting for a mission like this. Now they would be the first humans to engage alien enemies in combat. Harrison looked at the star charts showing coalition space. Somewhere out there, innocent beings were dying while their killers celebrated. That was about to change. Earth was coming, and they would bring justice with them. The message had been sent. The plea had been heard. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when someone cried for help and Earth answered the call.